With no further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce Margaret Leinen. Yesterday we were at Scripps Institution Oceanography. This is the second year that we've been working on a co-hosted event with Scripps Institution Oceanography. And many people know San Diego because of Scripps and because of the Navy, not necessarily because of our BlueTech cluster, but it's important that we be working closely together. And I said earlier that I think Scripps needs us to bring them into the blue economy and help with tech transfer and all those great things, and we certainly need them. So, Margaret, if we could ask you to come up and say a few words and introduce Dr. Adele O'Connor.
Thanks, Michael. And we do need this blue economy. And it's been such a pleasure to work with the Maritime Alliance. And I think that I speak for directors of oceanographic institutions, not only here, but also all around the world, saying that we know that the oceans are absolutely critical for our economies and that they have great economic potential for technology, for jobs, and we've all been looking for the ways to connect to those economies and to talk about the things that we know and that we think are great opportunities. And clusters like the Maritime Alliance are starting to provide that opportunity. So I just came back I was in China about 6 weeks ago, and in Qingdao, where there's also a very strong cluster of maritime economy, ocean science, and the Chinese Navy. Likewise in UK, we're working with Plymouth Marine Lab and with the National Oceanography Center and the businesses there. We're beginning to see the welding of ocean science and the maritime economy. And I think that that's terrific. It's one of the things that gives me a lot of optimism about the future of the oceans. I wanted to mention a couple of other things that have just happened in the last year that I think give all of us a lot of optimism about the future for ocean science, for the oceans themselves, and for our sustainable use of the oceans. The first one is that when the UN developed its Millennium Development Goals after the Sustainable Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals coming after the Millennium Development Goals, one of the things that they realized was that they hadn't really explicitly talked about the oceans. And so for the very first time in talking about sustainability in general and the development goals for the entire globe, we have Sustainable Development Goal 14 for healthy oceans. And it's right next to Sustainable Development Goal 13 on climate change, joined us at the hip, as they should be, because of the tremendous impact that the oceans have on climate. So that was really an emergent change in the whole landscape of the way that the UN is thinking about development, sustainability, and the globe. Finally, the ocean's right in the center of that. The second big change came last year in Paris, when the Paris Agreement included for the first time mention of the oceans. And that was the result of a very active international partnership on oceans and climate. And I think that it was, for those of us who have worked in both, it was sort of inconceivable that in 20 previous conferences of the party that we'd never talked about the role of the oceans and recognized that. And now that is a reality. And the COP that's going on now includes a major piece which looks at the oceans and includes a very vibrant business sector involvement, talking about how we use the oceans sustainably and how that feeds into climate. The third big change that happened in the last year was that the G7 science ministers, under the leadership of Japan this year, called for a sustained program of ocean observation as part of GEO, the Global Earth Observation Initiative. And it's also been kind of strange for all of us who work in the oceans that we would have something called Global Earth Observations that had no ocean component. But G7 has given a very strong push for that, and GEO has now developed a new initiative called Blue Planet that looks for opportunities to observe the ocean, to understand the ocean, and all of the ways that it influences our economies. The last thing that gives me great optimism about the future for this vibrant economic sector and the science that is the foundation of it is that the set of conferences on the ocean that Secretary Kerry started, the Our Ocean Summit, which just concluded in September in D.C., ended with a commitment for 3 more years for 3 different groups to hold that. So we're now seeing at the highest ministerial level, and we had 14 foreign ministers attend that Our Ocean Summit, 100 different countries. That's incredible attention at the highest levels of diplomacy about the ocean. And the next host will be the EU, and I was just talking with someone from the EU desk in State Department, and she told me that they are thinking about how to foster and feature the marine clusters and BlueTech, blue economy in that. So I think that's a wonderful message too, to be able to show the vibrancy of this partnership, this collaboration at the level of meetings at which we have many of the foreign ministers of the world. So I think that should give us all a lot of optimism about the future of all of this, and from our part in science, the importance of the science that undergirds our understanding, that trains the future people who will work in this area, and that develops new ideas, new technologies to go forward. So I think that there's never been a more crucial time to heighten our roles in creating this vibrant and promising ocean economy.